Well, thanks, Keely, for the introduction. Very much looking forward, calling indeed from the other side of the Atlantic from Amsterdam, and having the pleasure to walk you through one of the biggest blind spots in cybersecurity right now. And just to give you a short update indeed on what is going on with the Chipsoft ransomware case. Basically, what is Chipsoft? That is a software company providing the patient file systems for 70%, 70 of all Dutch hospitals. And they are right now being ransomware. A couple of our clients, they are hospitals. Basically, the system is down right now, so they can't work on it. There's no communication, so no actual intel on what is going on. But what you see is that the dependencies are so enormous, and that's why I think it's so important the work that you are doing with providing this healthcare cybersecurity call to keep everyone updated on the latest developments, right? Because we are all intertwined, and you guys are all intertwined with these developments, and that's why it's so important to stay up to date. And we don't know yet how it's going to play out. I just hear a lot of complaints from Dutch hospitals that they don't get any real communication as to what's actually playing out. So probably they are still scrambling for what is going on. So we don't know how the attack started. We don't know the current status, whether they are going to pay a ransom or not. But this is causing a tremendous impact. And it's just a month after we had a major breach at the second biggest telecom provider in the Netherlands, which basically leaked the details of 8 million Dutch inhabitants. And that was after the shiny hunters got access into a Salesforce system of them. So it's now right now grabbing headlines here in Holland as well. Just to get into the topic of the presentation, and let me share my screen, because I want to talk to you about a criminal revolution. And that is the topic of info stealers. And I want to kick it off with a short... Good morning. Sorry, no worries. I want to kick it off. You can share my screen, right? You can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Perfect. I want to start off with just a short quiz, and let's see how it works in Zoom, because I think we can react and put our hands up. And what I want to do in this short quiz, because I can see we have 63 participants, is to measure what you think is the right answer. So just do a hand raise or not. So first of all, what is an info stealer? So if you think it's a type of criminal, keep your hand down. If you think it's a type of malware, put your hand up. And we'll just count the number of hand raises that we're seeing to see what people are actually thinking, just to gauge the current knowledge level in this call about info stealers. And I see right now, I think approximately 15, 20 hands being raised. So I'll take that as a 1/3 going for answer B and 2/3 for answer A. And then my first take here is that I see now 22 hand raises. The right answer is B. So it's a type of malware. So let's head on to the second question. So you can all put your hands down or keep them raised, depending on what your answer is. What is the primary target of an info stealer? So we now know right now that it's malware. Are they basically going after money from your bank account, or is it login data and session token? So what is the right answer here? Just checking out the hands being raised. I'm counting 19, 20, 21, 23, inching upward, 25, 26, 27, 28. So I think it's now edging towards a more divided line, at least for the ones participating. It's indeed B, so that is correct, login data and session tokens. And then the last question in my small quiz, which hack started with an info stealer? So if you think Snowflake and Change Healthcare, that started with an info stealer infection, you can keep your hand down. If you say, well, Colonial Pipeline, MGM Resorts, that probably started with an info stealer, then please put your hand up. And I see some applause, that's also great, right? All right, I count 16 hands being raised, 15 decreasing a bit, and the right answer here is A. So both Snowflake and also the Chicago company Change Healthcare both these hacks, they initially started with an InfoSphere infection, and especially in the case of Snowflake, that was multiple hacks at once. Well, to kick it off properly, let me first introduce myself. As was already said, PassGuard, we are a dark web monitoring platform. Basically, we are infiltrated into criminal environments, and we are seeing what the criminals are trading over there. And our specialty is basically info stealers. So actual information taken from infected devices. I'm going to tell you a lot more about that and why it's so relevant today. And interestingly, track record in healthcare, we recently announced our partnership with a network of healthcare organizations in the Leiden region. And for those among you who for whom Leiden rings a bell, that's probably from your history books, because that is where the roots lay of the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Because before the Pilgrim Fathers set sail to Boston, they first spent 11 years in Leiden. So that is our historical bond here playing up again. And what we do is basically grab the data, provide it via our APIs and our platform to our clients to make sure they're up to date. Well, that's enough about us. Let's now dive into 3 reasons to pay attention to this particular case. Why is it so important that in this call you're actually paying attention to what I'm going to tell you? First of all, info stealers are causing massive damage. We already saw the example of the Change Healthcare ransomware attack that basically started as well with an info stealer. According to investigators, we also saw recently a new update about thousands of credentials of people working at the UK's National Health Service. I think probably also relevant to you. We also had the Snowflake breach. Many examples of attacks that initially started the initial access with an info stealer. So that's reason number 1. Reason number 2 is that it's booming business and increasing quite swiftly. As you can see in the table on the left, data from Kaspersky, that the number of individual infections with info stealers was just over 1 million in 2020. And right now it's their forecast. It's just flatlining a bit. Don't mind about the drop because they work in estimates. So you can basically pull through the line that it's now in the numbers of 20 million approximately per year. So it has increased approximately 16 times in just 5 years. And we're also seeing that ransomware groups are basically pivoting to info stealers because they can earn more money there, right? And thirdly, it's that they're completely unknown. And that's why it's so important that you guys, as you're in this call, know more about this so you can also educate your peers about this underestimated risk. Take a look here at the Google search trend, right? What you can see, first of all, that's the line that's going up and down. That's the search interest in ransomware. And if we compare that with info stealers, we see that it barely scratches the surface. So we added all the search terms, info stealers, info stealer malware. Doesn't matter all too much. It barely registers. So that's a big blind spot right now. And that is a problem. And first of all, I want to walk you through the point, how do these infections actually start? What is the starting point of an info stealer infection? And later we'll get into how it works. And most importantly, what you can do against it to protect your organization. So how do they usually start? I think this screenshot gives an excellent impression of that. Because what we see here is a screenshot of a desktop. And what we see is a lot of applications being which were installed, like League of Legends, Palworld, Roblox. So what we are seeing basically is a lot of games. And what is happening actually right now on the screen, in the middle of the screen, is a link with an instruction where someone can download a crack on the game. And this is the main point where info stealers start. Basically, people downloading illegal software, mainly games, not wanting to pay the license fee, downloading the crack, and there they get the info stealer infection. And what you see right here, and that's the interesting point about this screenshot, is that this is not a mock-up. That's something that I made. This is an actual screenshot made by the malware, shared on the criminal marketplace. So that shows just how far the access goes that info stealers have over devices. And another entry point is how they trick people in actually downloading something. They don't just aim for adults, but also for kids who, of course, like to play Fortnite. And then they try to trick them into downloading the cheats, for example, using YouTube videos. So that's also a perspective what we are seeing, right? Targeting kids using videos on YouTube. And there you can see the instruction down there. You see the download link via Mediafire, and then the instruction download the hack, which I think is a very dual it's dual interpretable in this particular case. But you will also find it via search results on search engines. So what you're seeing here, for example, if you look for a Midjourney download or a Zoom download, you might find websites which are basically advertised by the criminals. And that showcases why this is such a dangerous risk, because apparently it pays off for them to pay for ads to trick people into downloading their info stealers, right? So what they do is they guide people who use the search engine to their fake website that can basically look like this. And then they trick them to downloading Zoom, into downloading Midjourney. Doesn't matter which imitation of valid software it is. And then, of course, usually it's a broken software. It doesn't work, but they do install once they execute the file, they download the info stealer. And another thing that we're seeing is the click fix epidemic, the fake CAPTCHAs. So of course, CAPTCHAs are changing continuously, whether you have to select the motorcycles on a particular given selected tiles with motorcycles, or do another combination of keys. And what you're seeing right now increasingly is this particular one popping up, which looks like a CAPTCHA. Sometimes they even hide it below a CAPTCHA. So you have the I'm not a robot, the fake looking the CAPTCHA, and then you get the verification failed network error. To fix this, press Windows key plus R, press Ctrl V, press Enter, and then you directly run the info stealer on your device. So these are just some of the examples how info stealer infections start. And just to give you an idea about what happens afterwards, what is the actual insight that criminals get, this screenshot gives an excellent view. Because basically what you're seeing here is a command and control dashboard. So this is a dashboard that the criminals that distribute the info stealers actually have access to, and it showcases again how commercialized this is, right? This is a mass business model, malware as a service, just like SaaS, where people actually log into, and also increasingly with one click of the button, they can hijack a session. That's how standardized this has become, with their own login portals to get into the command and control panel itself. And the marketplaces, they have also changed, right? What we know is the traditional dark web, where big, enormous breaches are being posted with millions and millions of entries, but this is different. Just take a look at this screenshot, where you can see that it's actually about a device that is being traded there, for which an amount is being asked. You see the icons on the different websites. These are the sessions on the device. We see the infection timestamp over here, and via the hyperlink, you can download basically the info stealer log with a lot more detail to select whether you actually want to go to purchase this to get the session tokens. So this showcases the revolution that has taken place on the criminal marketplaces. And again, they are standardizing, right? Because a one-on-one sell of that information, that's maybe already interesting, but why not also go to Telegram and have a bot there as criminals that you can query to see whether there are any logs in there. And a log here is a technical term for URL, username, password. That's also extracted by the info stealers. For example, you see here someone interacting with such a bot, get rows, and then it says, well, enter your request. I want Lufthansa. Searching may take time, 3 to 5 minutes, and within 2 minutes, it returned with an estimated 4,600 lines. And if I want to buy 500, it costs me $34. That's how standardized these marketplaces have become. Walking through it swiftly, of course, to be mindful of your time. Why are these info stealers dangerous for you? Because that's a question, right? Now we know how they enter. We know how the marketplace works, but why are they so dangerous? Well, first of all, that is, and this is my movie reference, of course, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. There's some good news here. And the good news is that protected endpoints, they are quite safe. I can maybe already say very safe and well protected against info stealers. So what we see basically is EDRs, corporate EDRs, they work mainly behavior-based. They are very well capable of identifying info stealers before they are capable of stealing the information. So that's good news. So I get quite a lot of alerts from my clients and say, well, we had an info stealer infection on a managed device, Tom. Can you maybe run that on the marketplace? And we don't see them popping up. That's good news. But I also have some bad news, as you may have guessed. And the bad news is that consumer AVs, they are not so capable in detecting info stealers. Why is that? They work primarily behavior-based, signature-based, based on the signature of the known malwares. But to get the signature, first they have to be found. And what do the info stealer creators do? They keep on refurbishing their own code structure so that it every time has a unique signature that is not detected by even an active version of Defender for consumers, but also other AV variants like Malwarebytes, you named it. And the ugly news here is bring your own device. Because here we see that it touches organizations. So probably you might say, well, Tom, we have an EDR. I know that, right? But it's in the periphery. So it's not a technical problem. It's a problem of control. So it's those employees using their private device to log into your corporate systems. It's those freelancers and suppliers using their devices to log into your Microsoft 365 environment or into your patient file system. And that's where the actual access gets stolen. And that's what is accessible for the criminals. And then you might also say, Tom, we have some other good news. We monitor on risky sign-ins using Entra. And in principle, it's really good. I really recommend that. But it's not a silver bullet, unfortunately, against info stealers. And here comes my second movie reference. Because not only do they steal the active session, right, enabling them to bypass multi-factor authentication, they get a lot more detail from the device because they have the IP address. And then they use a residential proxy from a VPN provider to mimic that. They have the device fingerprint, enabling them to spoof basically all the device details to act like they are that same device. They have the browser build session and also the extension, and that's also something they can spoof to basically still, even if conditional access has been implemented, get access into that device. And then my last reference here is relating to the Bear Paddington. And why is that? Because here you can see the Bear Paddington doing the laundry, and that relates to a new Russian state actor that has been identified by the Dutch intelligence services in May 2025, and that is Laundry Bear. Laundry Bear, they were able to successfully breach the Dutch police and to get the contact details of all the individual Dutch policemen and women, which was quite a big heist, as you can imagine. And why does the Kremlin right now have access to all the contact details of the Dutch police corps? That is because an info stealer was active on their private device of a Dutch police employee, that police employee logged into the corporate environment, and the Russian state actor Laundry Bear, they were watching those marketplaces, just like we do. They saw the access there, and they decided to purchase it and to basically abuse that particular type of access to grab the information. Why is that relevant for you? Because in that same report, the intelligence services outlined that they're not just after government institutions. They are after basically everything that they can grab, including social institutions. So I'm quite sure that if they could get access to a US healthcare provider, that will be of interest to them. So it's not just petty criminals and ransomware actors active on those marketplaces, state actors as well. Wrapping it up, what can you do against info stealers? What are the steps that you can take? First of all, limit access, right? The less actual devices have access into your environments, the less info stealers actually strike gold once they have a successful infection. So limit access from managed devices. Implement conditional access. Give suppliers, freelancers a managed device if you can. And limit session duration per application. Make it as short as possible and limit also renewals on that. Secondly, implement this also in your awareness programs. I'm quite sure all of you have some kind of awareness program running, and I'm also quite sure that none of these awareness programs explicitly detail the risk of info stealers. But because it mainly strikes via employees, we already saw that there's no search traffic on that, but it's usually the employees, the freelancers that download the info stealer, that work from the unmanaged device. They synchronize the browser sessions, and they're also usually or often the first to notice that something is off. And you want them to tell you to reach out to them. So include it in your awareness program. And then thirdly, make sure you scan your exposure. So once a criminal actually has access into a device that has access into your company systems, you want to know that. In order to facilitate that, we offer a free quick scan on our website. So you can do that just as we wrap up our call. Go to passguard.com/scan. There you can run your email domain of your organization. There you can see instantly whether there already is InfoStealer exposure, right? Just to make it low threshold and see whether there's anything that does relate to you. So that's my presentation for today. I was told to keep it in 20 minutes. I think I ran a bit over time. If you want to stay connected, do reach out via LinkedIn or anywhere else. And if there's still some time for questions, do let me know. I'm available.
That was great. Yes, we have plenty of time for questions from the group. So feel free to raise your hand or just come off of mute. So I do have a question to kind of kick us off. So just thinking about the best way to protect individual users within an organization from this kind of malware. You talked about kind of change management. Is that regular, emails, communications to staff? Is that training? What are some of your recommendations?
So first of all, I think you want to train your colleagues on the entry methods, where I started the presentation with. So how do InfoSealer infections actually start? So I think that is one part, right? So for example, the fake CAPTCHAs, right? I don't think that the regular employee knows about it. And if they don't know about it, they are more vulnerable into falling for that trap. But also the fact, the risk it poses when you mix company logins from private devices. I don't think that's a real topic for most people, but that does pose an enormous risk to the organization. So I think outlining that in awareness program is really important, and also basically how it can hurt them, right? If you can show what's the stake for them, because usually what we see is just a couple of sessions relating to the company, but all the other sessions are also stolen from the device. And that relates to all someone's private identity, right? That's not only your email account. That's everything you do as a private person from that particular device, also including the most private things you are doing on that device. So I think they have every stake into knowing what info stealers are and how they can prevent it, both for themselves and the company.
That's great. Thank you. Any other questions for Tom while we have him?
I had a question. Okay. This is Joe.
Sure.
I think on a lot, and Tom, that was an awesome presentation. I really appreciate it. There's a lot of great information, considering some of the stuff we're seeing, especially in healthcare, with data being swiped left and right. I think Stryker comes to mind, and then most recently Brockton Health Services and Mass. So my question to you is, like, what kind of policies do you put in place, or what would you recommend for environments where, a lot of them that I work in, they have a BYOD policy in place? And so, you have logins from multiple devices all across mobile devices, people bringing their own computers into an environment. So what would you recommend for protection for something like that?
Yeah, so of course, conditional access where you can. Bind as much as possible logins to devices and IPs. And I think the next step here is as well, especially for companies that do have an active, my advice will first of all be get rid of the BYOD policy as much as you can. Right? So usually that's not possible for all applications, but maybe also using the actual proof from InfoSealer infection data, you can get rid of some. That would be my first and primary advice, right? All the other measures are mitigating, but still there's, I think, a very quite a large residual risk where you would want to get rid of. But I think the next stage here is as well is compliant devices. So if you can enforce that at least there's a antivirus active on my device, that at least it has been updated with the last updates, I think that also limits the risk to some extent. But yeah, my first and foremost advice would be get rid of the BYOD as much as you can.
Yeah, I agree. Yep, thanks.
Any other questions?
So one quick follow on to that. Get rid of the BYOD. I mean, I think many of us are probably in the same boat that we've lost that battle. I mean that ship sailed. Beyond that, one of the reasons years ago that we pushed internally to get a SOC in place is that we get, at least if something happens, and it usually does on a BYOD device, and usually after hours, SOC usually picks up some sort of signal fairly quickly, and able to act on that. But without that monitoring, well, I think right now we're at, I think 6 million log entries a day that get monitored just from the SOC, and then the AI tools and a team. But I know that's also budget constrained for a lot of organizations.
Yeah, and I think that's a very realistic take. And maybe the other step that you can take is limit session time and renewal rights. So I think that's another element here where you can limit access, even if it's open for BYOD, is to make sure that at least every 24 hours, a fresh session has to be started with, again, multi-factor authentication. That's not a 100% measure. It's not a silver bullet, but also that limits the risk. Because sometimes, but what we saw at the Snowflake InfoSealer breaches, multiple customer instances were breached. Some of the credentials, most of the credentials that were abused were historical, and some were even 4 years old. And I think a lot of low-hanging fruit measures, as we were just discussing, for example, renewing those sessions every 24 hours. That's also already going to help against these types of attacks.
All right. Any final questions for Tom?
And otherwise, you know where to find me.
Absolutely. And we will also make the recording of the presentation available on our website, so people can revisit it or share it with others within their organizations. So thanks so much,
Perfect.
Tom. Really appreciate it.